Since the mid-20th century, democratic elections have relied on a clear baseline. If a politician buys your attention, they have to identify themselves as the source. This mandatory disclosure acts as a critical filter for the public. When a message is clearly labeled as coming from a campaign, voters naturally apply a higher level of skepticism, recognizing the inherent political bias behind the claims. But as information gathering moves away from traditional media, voters are increasingly turning to minimalist interfaces. These AI search assistants provide synthesized answers that often lack source links or the paid-for-by disclaimers required in traditional advertising. This shift toward AI-mediated search removes the primary layer of attribution that allows democracy to function. It replaces a clearly labeled political environment with an opaque one. Research at Oxford and Cornell universities in 2025 and 2026 investigated the risks of this transition. Their studies focused on the specific persuasive power of large language models. The findings were consistent. AI systems are now reliably more persuasive than human experts. This held true even when the humans were highly trained, given time to research, and offered significant financial incentives to win the argument. This persuasion works because voters often perceive a machine's output as a neutral synthesis of facts. Because there is no visible human author, the user's critical defenses are significantly lowered. If AI has become the most effective tool for shifting political opinion, groups capable of influencing what these systems say hold a significant invisible influence over the electorate. Artificial intelligence models operate as sophisticated retrieval systems. They scan the public web in real time, synthesizing content from millions of different pages to generate a single response. Cornell researchers identified a specific vulnerability in this retrieval process called Web Agent Retrieval Poisoning, or WARP. A WARP attack is strategically targeted. Instead of building massive fake accounts, operatives find existing, high-traffic pages that AI bots frequently consult, like community wikis or forums, and modify them. Political consultancies are already identifying this as a new frontier for reputation management. Firms like Snake River Strategies have openly discussed the benefits of shaping the data that feeds these systems. This strategy targets the information supply chain. Because AI answers are generated from the public record, campaigns can shape the final output by strategically altering the initial inputs the models read. This creates a direct, largely unregulated path for political messaging to move from a campaign operative's keyboard straight into a voter's search results. Consider how this works in a real-world scenario. A campaign operative identifies a popular community forum and injects a manufactured talking point about a candidate's past into a trending thread. Later, an undecided voter uses an AI chatbot to ask a broad question about that candidate's record on the same issue. The AI performs a web search, retrieves the poisoned forum post, and incorporates that manufactured data into its summary. The response appears as a calm, authoritative paragraph. The original campaign fingerprints are gone, leaving only a statement that feels like a neutral, verified fact. This sequence effectively hides political spin inside a machine-generated answer, making it nearly impossible for the voter to evaluate the source of the information. While this technical exploit remains difficult to detect, state-level regulators have been active. Over 30 states have passed laws attempting to govern the use of AI in elections. Data from the National Conference of State Legislatures shows that these laws focus almost exclusively on visible, synthetic media. They target deepfake videos, altered photos, and synthetic audio clips. This creates a significant gap in oversight. Currently, there is no regulatory framework or disclosure requirement for the quiet manipulation of the data that AI systems retrieve. Current policy is focused on the most obvious forms of synthetic media, leaving the less visible mechanisms of AI-driven influence almost entirely untracked. Researchers note that while we haven't seen a massive domestic rollout of these tactics yet, the technology is already being used in the field. Meta officials recently reported disrupting coordinated foreign networks that used AI-generated summaries of news stories to populate fictitious websites. This was a deliberate effort to seed the information environment with unattributed content. Addressing this requires more than just labeling deepfakes. It requires an independent auditing infrastructure to reveal exactly how different AI models retrieve and prioritize their information. When political operatives ghostwrite the neutral facts voters rely on, the ability to distinguish between a candidate's spin and an objective record begins to vanish. This loss of source transparency makes it increasingly difficult for citizens to verify the information they use to make electoral decisions.